I'm Larry Mantle. We've got a wonderful crowd, a couple of hundred Orange County residents who are here to be immersed in Orange County issues. If you missed our first panel earlier this hour, we invite you to go to laist.com/airtalk, and you can hear that conversation with our terrific guests. For this portion of the program, we're joined by campaign consultant and media strategist for Democratic candidates, Orrin Evans. He has run campaigns for Congress members Derek Tran and Dave Min. He's partner with Armour Evans Media. Thank you very much for joining us. Also with us is John Gould, director of the UCI OC poll and UC Irvine Dean of the School of Social Ecology. Thank you so much. Continuing with us from the previous panel, the voice of OC, founder and editor-in-chief Norberto Santana. Sean Steele is the former chair of the Republican Party in California, has been active in GOP politics since the Reagan gubernatorial campaign of 1966. And he's currently national committeeman to the Republican National Committee. And Professor Judy Zujing Wu, UC Irvine Professor of History and Asian American Studies. She's also Associate Dean at UCI. We're long past the days when Orange County was solidly Republican and conservative with just a few outliers like Santa Ana and Laguna Beach. So now we have a Democratic majority county, but we have purple districts that are vital to who's going to control Congress, and fascinating demographic shifts that make these congressional districts very, very interesting. So Dean Gould, let me begin with you. Just a quick overview. What are the county's political demographics today?
Well, I am old enough to remember when this was a bright red county. This was the county that Ronald Reagan said good Republicans went to die in. Today, for the last decade, we have become a purple county. Now, what does it mean to be a purple county? Number one, we're roughly a third, Democrat, Republican, Independent, or no party preference. We also tend to flip back and forth on whether we're voting Democratic or Republican. We tend to be going Democratic for president these days. We tend to go Republican for governor. So it really is a different kind of Orange County. The other thing that's really remarkable here is that we look different than most counties in the country. Of the top 25 by population, there are only 3 that are purple. They are us, Maricopa County, Arizona, that's Phoenix, and Tarrant County, Texas, which is Fort Worth. And of those 3, only one has had 2 television shows and a movie done about them. That's us. So we really are the shining example of what a large purple county looks like in America.
You mentioned Maricopa County, which is such an interesting case study because you've got Phoenix, which is heavily Democratic, and then you've got the Valley of the Sun's east side with communities like Scottsdale and Mesa, much more conservative. You've got this emerging with houses built everywhere on the west side of the valley, more working class demographic there. Does Orange County resemble that at all? Is it that neatly kind of demarcated?
A great question, particularly since I moved here from Maricopa County.
Oh, okay.
So I saw Phoenix, I've seen Orange County. You have to look at the neighborhoods. And we really do see a lot of Democratic neighborhoods near Republican neighborhoods, near mixed neighborhoods. So it's easy to think of us as, we're real stratified, and it is a little bit. But even within Democratic or Republican areas, we do have strongholds of the other, including a lot of independents who go either way.
How do you explain going for the Republican candidate for governor and the Democratic candidate for president?
It tends to turn on who's turning out and what the top issues are at a given time. And also, when you're talking about a county that is so evenly balanced between Democrats and Republicans and independents, it's only a shift of 2 or 3 percentage points that really turns an election.
All right. By the way, we're hearing from John Gould, UC Irvine, Dean of the School of Social Ecology and Director of the UCI Orange County poll. Sean, I wanted to ask you just about the tremendous changes you've seen in your decades here. What is it like for you to get up in the morning and realize this is such a different county than the one you've been working in all these years?
In the RNC, I have to explain to people, they laugh at California. What's wrong with California? And I export Republicans. I export millions of Republicans out of California to populate Arizona, the Carolinas,
You're sending them out,
Tennessee, yeah. And oddly enough, since October of 23, the party has grown some 500. And much older. The Secretary of State just issued a report on that, but I think it's close to 500,000 plus new Republicans, and the Democrats 100,000 Republicans, and the American Independent Party is exploding, and as are so.
Is that because people think it really is independent?
Notwithstanding that we're still pushing Republicans out of California, there's still Republicans that are emerging, which actually quite surprises me. We saw since Bush, there's a huge downtrend. While other parts of the country are bright red. West Virginia used to be a hardcore Democrat state. Tennessee, many others. Florida had 1 million Democrats just 10 years ago, and now it's got 1 million Republicans. So there's a huge change in America. California is on the wrong side of that, I think. There's lots of reasons, lots of complications. There's a new middle class emerging in California. It's not business people. It's not white-collar people. It's basically government employees. They're the ones buying the homes. They're the ones, not wealthy big homes, but they're buying homes in Buena Park and Fountain Valley, and that's the new reality. That will not last very long, because if you don't have a private sector that's robust and healthy, the key problem is, as a Republican, is that today's children cannot afford to buy the home they were born in. That's why younger people are leaving California.
Sean,
there's no future.
I want to ask you about what I think of as the historic core of Republican voters in the county. Is there sort of the small business ethos, fighting against regulation, the ability to be able to run family businesses, and then also this was a real national center of evangelical Christianity. And as we've seen the demographic shift for Orange County Republicans, are those still power centers in the party in Orange County, or is it a different power center now?
Well, it's really changed in many respects. It's not such a strong evangelical center, although the Catholic Church is as strong as it's ever been, as far as I can tell. But it's also brought about there's a huge number of Korean Americans that are coming in the north part of Orange County, and they're pretty conservative. And Vietnamese American, very interesting subject all over the map. But the largest number of homeowners in Fountain Valley, Garden Grove, and Westminster are Vietnamese. I mean, 80-90% of the new homeowners last 6 months in my research. So there's changes, and you're getting a lot of people leaving L.A. County for the obvious reasons. Who wants to live in L.A.? It's a dangerous.
Well, some of us.
You're on your own. I can't help you.
Let me bring Professor Wu into the conversation, because Sean, you just mentioned about Korean American growth in population. We have Chinese American growth. Irvine with a significant Chinese American population, multi-generation now Vietnamese American populace, from refugees from South Vietnam, being typically, I think, fair to say, more conservative than their kids. Now we're on to their grandkids. So Professor Wu, how important collectively, I know each of these are very different cases when we're talking about countries of origin, but how important collectively are Asian American voters here in the county?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate and for that question. So Orange County is incredibly significant for the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. It's the third largest population in the country by county. Now, again, there's differences. So within the Vietnamese population, it trends more Republican, but that shifts over time, over generation. For the people who came here as refugees, they were fleeing incredibly horrific conditions in their home countries. But those conditions were actually wrought by the United States. I teach about the Vietnam War, and some of the statistics about the war horrify me still. If you take all the bombs that were dropped during World War II, which is a global war, and you triple that, that's how much was dropped on Vietnam, which is a relatively small country. And twice as many of the bombs were dropped on South Vietnam, which is a U.S. ally. There was a statement at that time by an American military personnel that talked about we need to destroy it in order to save it. We had to destroy this country or village in order to save
So,
it from communism.
Professor, let me just hold
yeah.
on, Sean. How is that? Because I think of the refugees camp being very pro-American and rather
She
conservative.
can't,
Hold on,
she
Sean,
can't explain that.
Hold on.
This is outrageous.
Sean, hold on, please.
That's outrageous.
Please, Sean.
Yeah, well, nobody wants to hear
Please.
you.
Please, Sean. Let's not be rude. So, Professor, please. Professor, I think of that first generation, the refugee generation, as very pro-American, very patriotic as well. What have you seen with subsequent generations? Have they moved away from that sort of political mindset, do you think?
Many of the students that I work with at UCI are Vietnamese American or Southeast Asian, because Orange County is home to the largest Vietnamese population outside of Vietnam. And they are here because of the war. They relocated as refugees, they remigrated, and they reconstituted their communities. So certainly that initial generation that came to the United States were very pro-American. They were allied with the United States. But subsequent generations have raised questions about what is needed for their communities. So the poverty rate of Asian Americans, according to federal census data, is about 10 or 11%. But nonprofit organizations like the United Way have done studies that measure what does it take to actually live in Orange County. And so the poverty rate, according to their study, is much higher, about a third.
Because the cost of living, yeah.
Absolutely. And that's higher compared to white residents of Orange County, which is about a quarter. And it's much higher for Latinx residents, which is about half.
Dean Gould, let me go back to you. So have you seen a shift in the ways in which different Asian American groups have voted over time in the county?
We think what we're seeing is Asian American voters moving a little bit to the left. Now, what we don't know is whether that is a long-term shift or that was from the 2024 election, where there were two Asian American congressional candidates who won and may have brought Asian American voters along with them into the Democratic category. That's something we're going to be tracking as we go forward. The other interesting thing during that time is we've seen Latino voters in this county move away from the Ds. They're not moving yet here to the Rs. They're moving more to the no party preference or independent. But there is definitely a shift going on with the Latino voters, just as we think we're beginning to see some shift of Asian American voters moving left.
And Norberto, I wanted to ask you about what you're seeing, because nationally it seems younger men particularly have recently moved to the right. We've seen the support of President Trump among younger men at a much higher level than we've seen among younger women, and a real gender divide politically. And I'm just curious, your sense, are you seeing that in Orange County?
Well, I mean, I think it's hard when you're a reporter on the ground. It's hard to derive those types of generalities. You know, I do see the trends that John just mentioned about, I think as people, immigrants even, are here longer time, there is more of an interest in things like affordable housing, about traffic, about questions about development. So I think those issues end up playing in these campaigns much more than everything else. As Sean mentioned, many of the children of the people that are in this audience can't afford the homes here. And that really drives a lot of the desire for change, whether it's disenchantment with the Republican Party or disenchantment with the Democratic Party. The younger people, I find, are much more connected to the issues that bring them to the poll, as opposed to the ideological ideas of the past.
Interesting. Orrin Evans, when you're running campaigns for candidates here in Orange County, are there particular things you think about in, particularly purple districts where you've consulted with Democratic candidates that are kind of particular to Orange County in reaching voters here?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest things that can disenfranchise any demographic group is corruption. And I'd like to applaud KPCC for LAist for its exposing of the $1.2 million that Michelle Steele awarded to her political consultant at the end of the campaign. It came out a little too late.
That's a low blow, and I
And-
will respond to that.
And if you want
I-
to, if you want to have an
I will have
argument with
guts and-
LAist, you're more than welcome to. But $1.2 million to the political consultant
You're
for
a ha-
needy
you're a
senior,
hack.
Hold on,
needy
wait a
senior
minute.
meals,
You're-
needy
you're-
senior meals. You want to talk about evangelicals?
Gentlemen, I'm trying to lead the conversation. I appreciate you have issues you care about, but I want to stay on the topic here. So I asked you, when you're running campaigns, are there specifics about Orange County that maybe if you were running campaigns in other purple district, other areas, you wouldn't necessarily consider? So I want to get a sense of what's different here, if anything.
Well, the local journalism in Orange County and Southern California is alive and well, thanks to LAist, Norberto's hard work, others. And it is so vitally important. I just want to reemphasize what the journalists were saying. The citizen journalists, the watchdog agencies that Michelle Steele voted to defund when she was a county supervisor. It's incredibly important to find this information to bring out the issues that voters care about.
So give us an example when you're running a campaign for a Democratic candidate. What do you do? You specifically look for malfeasance, or what are the kinds of themes that you find play in Orange County?
The first thing that we do is extensive research on who we're running against. And when someone has been in politics as long as some of the incumbents here on the Republican side, it's quite easy to find some of this. But a lot of it is partnership with individuals on the ground, our activist base. One of the great things is the blogosphere and what they can find. These citizen journalists bring this information forward. At the end of the day, it's localizing issues that people care about. When you're able to insert these local identifiers, whether it's the Huntington Beach Library or UC Irvine grants, when you can bring that into a conversation about healthcare or education, when you can tie it home, that's when voters start to move.
I want to go back to you, John Gould, UC Irvine Dean, the School of Social Ecology. We have Katie Porter, a former member of Congress here, who, at least at this point, and this is subject to change, has the highest polling for Democrats in the gubernatorial field. Now, at this point, it's pretty soft.
Wide open.
Yes, soft, because there's not much name recognition among the candidates. There's no heavy hitter there. But to think of there being a candidate from Orange County who's in that position, where do you put that in terms of the history of the county? And because so much of the political power in California has really come from the Bay Area, not from Southern California.
I think you can make an argument that most of the power in this state has either come from LA or the Bay Area. So for there to be anyone else coming out of here or elsewhere that's going to potentially take the mantle is really quite impressive. Whether she has staying power, we will see. But the fact that Orange County has produced a number of political operatives and candidates and elected officials that are getting attention is really remarkable. We had 4 competitive congressional races this time around. Now, Proposition 50 may very well change all of that. But there was an argument this past time around in the most recent election that Orange County could very well have turned the House of Representatives one way or the other.
And let me ask you, Sean, just briefly about if Prop 50 passes, how do you see it affecting the congressional representation in Orange County?
I'd be happy to answer that. First, trash talking my wife is unacceptable. It's a lie. You know it's a lie. You get paid for this stuff. I've never been paid in politics in my life. I'm a volunteer. But that's what I expect from hacks. In terms of the Dr. Wu, you've taken a straight...
Yeah, Sean, wait a minute.
Dr.
I'll
Wu,
come back to you to respond to her. I've got limited time on the radio broadcast.
Well, I know
so
that,
if
and
you
I
don't want to
haven't-
answer the
I
question
haven't
I
had-
asked you, I'm going to move to someone else.
I haven't had a chance to
You can
respond.
come back and respond. I told you I'll give you time to respond.
Yeah, in terms of Prop
50, how does that affect the county?
Newsom's running for president. This is his only hook to try to make himself relevant when he's no longer governor in 26. And he's using $100 million of money that he's getting mostly from labor unions and Democrat interest groups. And George Soros was his $10 million to try to make himself
I
relevant.
asked you about the effect on the county, Sean.
It would dramatically People in California voted for a Republican congressman, some 38%. They now have 17%. Once Newsom is finished, if he wins, and I don't think he will, but if he wins, the Republicans still get 38% of the vote, but they get 5% of the representation. So that is like Massachusetts. 36% of the people voted for Republicans. They have 0 Republicans in Massachusetts because of gerrymandering. Same thing with Connecticut. It's an old political trick, but here's the
Well,
difference.
let me ask you about Orange County specifically. That was I can't remember doing a panel where people didn't want to answer the questions I've asked.
Yeah.
It's a little frustrating. So Sean, and please, if you're going to compete with me from the audience, it only makes it more challenging for me. So Sean,
Well, of course, Orange County has a significant Republican and Independent. In fact, the Democrats are a minority compared to the Independents and the Republicans. They dominate the entire county.
all right.
So it's a one-party dictatorship.
So John Gould, how do you see the numbers breaking out if Prop 50 wins?
Well, first of all, I want to just tell everyone who's listening in Los Angeles, our polling that we do here shows that what you've been hearing a little bit earlier here is not what Orange County residents say they are looking for when they go to the polls. Specifically to the question of what Prop 50 will do. I think what we will likely see is 2 seats become incredibly safe. So the 47th, which is Dave Min, is probably going to become a very safe Democratic seat. The 40th, which is currently Congresswoman Young Kim, is going to become a safe Republican seat, but the question is whether it'll be hers or someone else, maybe Ken Calvert, that runs against her. Derek Tran's seat, 45th, that's going to stay quite competitive. That's my guess on that. Because really, it's only going to become, at least according to independent analysis, only about 2% more Democratic. That still becomes very much a competitive seat.
All right, Norberto, your thoughts about trying to project the future of this county? Is that at all possible to do when you look at demographic shifts and political change over time?
Yeah, I think that, again, it becomes, as John mentioned earlier, it becomes a question of turnout, really, because I think more and more, this is one of the most purple areas. I've worked at newspapers all over the country, and Orange County is one of the most purple areas I've ever dealt with, and I don't see that going away. I wonder sometimes how relevant the parties are in the future, as opposed to voters really moving towards issues of spending, oversight, accountability, and again, concrete issues like housing, traffic, homelessness.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and John, in the polling that you've done of the biggest issues for Orange County residents, what are they?
Hands down, economics. That was it. That matters more to people than anything else. Cost of housing, cost of living. And one of the things that we found that was really quite surprising to us, we first started asking this question in 2023. We asked homeowners and we asked renters, are you concerned, have you been concerned about making rent or paying your mortgage? And keep in mind that about half of Orange County residents are mortgage holders, they own their house, half are renters. We found that about 1 in 5 homeowners were worried about being foreclosed upon. All right, that's somewhat troubling, but the real troubling figure was that half of renters were worried that they could not make rent and they would be evicted. Those are astronomically high figures, and that's what's driving a lot of the voting trends here. People are very concerned about economics, and the number one thing in the 2024 election, we were in the field about a week and a half after the election. People said the economy, the economy, the economy. Even crime, which people think of as being a big-time Orange County issue.
Yeah, I was going to say, historically, I think of that as being a huge, law and order being a huge driver here.
And so we asked this question of people of their congressional vote. Was this an important issue or the most important issue? So it matters. It was an important issue for 46% of voters. And only the difference between voters and Republican voters was not big. 50% of Republican voters said it was an important issue. But here's the thing that makes us appear different than we used to in Orange County. Crime is the most important issue. Only 12% of voters said that, even among Republicans. only 23% said it was the most important issue. So crime, is it important to voters? Absolutely. But it pales by about 2 or 3 to 1 against the economy and the ability to afford to live here.
All right, I want to thank our panelists on our LAist radio broadcast. Our thanks to John Gould, UC Irvine Dean of the School of Social Ecology, Director of the UCI OC poll, Orrin Evans, Campaign Consultant, Media Strategist for Democratic Candidates, Norberto Santana, the Voice of OC Founder and Editor-in-Chief, Sean Steele, former Chair of the California Republican Party in the state of California, California National Committeeman to the Republican National Committee, and UC Irvine Professor of History and Asian American Studies, where she's also Associate Dean Judy Wu. Thank you all very much for being with us. Thank you for joining us for our Air Talk 40th anniversary event on the road from the Bowers Museum in Santa Ana. NPR's Here and Now is next.
From unsolved mysteries to unexplained